And this is Block 8, Pax Americana. Section 4, We Like Ike, with the section The Cult of Domesticity. Even though many millions of women joined the American workforce, popular culture portrayed the 1950s family as an idealistic nuclear family unit. And you can tell, here's, a cartoon. This is what, your 1950s American family looks like. And, Dad obviously just got home from work. He's in his business suit. He's got his little bow tie. He's looking thrilled as all heck. There's Mom in her apron. She's just baked a cake, and 3 little beautiful blonde-haired children are, jumping around Dad. He's got his little boy and his 2 little girls. And this was the cultural ideal. And it's a cultural ideal because this is actually what happened for millions of Americans. For millions of Americans in the 1950s, this was reality. At least, on its surface. That, Dad went to work. He wore his, his gray business suit. He traveled into work, from his house in the suburbs into the city. Mom stayed home watching out for the kids. And, cooking and cleaning. And when, Dad got home, dinner would be on the table. And, Dad would sit there, "So, son, what was your day like today?" And he would go and tell him. And 1950s television kind of supported that same idea. That the other picture here is the family from the hit television show Leave It to Beaver. Where everything's kind of perfect. And everything is, solved in, a 27-minute television sitcom. This cult of domesticity was kind of aimed at women, that the proper role for a woman is what already in the 1950s was considered the traditional role of wife and mom. And, wife was supposed to take care of Dad and, raise the children and watch out in the neighborhood and bake tasty cakes and, support the local PTA and sell the Girl Scout cookies and all the stuff that stay-at-home moms are supposed to do. It's similar to that 19th century cult of true womanhood, that a woman's primary place is in the home. And the 1950s culture celebrated women as the caretakers of the home, serving as happy wives and wonderful mothers for all these boomer children. That if you want to compare, the role of women in from the 1840s and 50s to the 1940s and 50s, they're very similar with this idea of, for the cult of true womanhood and the cult of domesticity. It's the same idea, that a woman, that the children are the future, it's the woman's job to raise them, and Dad kind of brings home the bacon. And as we said, popular TV shows of the era, Leave It to Beaver, Father Knows Best, Ozzie and Harriet, Lassie, all portrayed these perfect, white middle-class American families. And they did so without irony, because most middle-class Americans lived this way. There was divorce, today marriages end in divorce about 1 in 2 times. In 1950, 1 in 17 marriages ended in divorce. So women and men stayed together. Kids had mom and dad at home. There was very rarely step-parents, or, you'd see Dad on weekends, or, every once in a while. Even in poor class and working class communities, the nuclear family was very, very much so intact in the 1950s. It was very rare to have children outside of marriage. That most Americans, whether they were middle class or lower, were being born into 2-parent families where their parents were married. Nope, we didn't have it. We'll show Betty Friedan. Now, a lot of women embraced this. That, a lot of women enjoyed being, Mrs. and enjoyed being mom. But a lot of women obviously didn't. And they were kind of forced into this role by society's expectations. That if all the women are, sitting around at home, not sitting around at home, but, being at home, working hard to raise children, working hard to, kind of be a member of a community, and you're not, it's kind of hard to kind of socially break out of that mold. That there's a social expectation that if you're somehow, not happy with your role as wife and mom, well, there must be something wrong with you. Because that's the role that you're supposed to have, and you looked around and it seemed that everybody was enjoying that role, and if you weren't, something was up with you. Betty Friedan was a 20th century American feminist who gave voice to the millions of women who felt very constrained and felt very stymied by this traditional understanding of what the family was supposed to be. And she wrote a book in and we're going to talk a lot more about this in Block 10, but she wrote a book in 1963 called The Feminine Mystique. And in that feminine mystique, she gave voice to women who felt that their suburban family life was dreary and dull and boring, and did not provide an outlet for their creative talents and energies. The feminine mystique gave women who did work kind of a license to work, that it's okay to work, that working is not in and of itself a bad thing, but it let them know that it was okay, because a lot of women in the 1950s who did work felt that they were unfeminine, that they were doing something that women ought not be doing, that in a perfect world they wouldn't have to work, and they should depend on their husband to make the money, and their children should not be absent, a mother at home. Betty Friedan in The Feminine Mystique kind of gave women a reason not to feel guilty for wanting to work and wanting to contribute to the wider economic good of the country, not just the family, the economic good of the country in terms of raising children. So The Feminine Mystique kind of did two things. It gave a voice to women who were at home and felt stuck at home, and it gave kind of cover to women who said, no, I want to work, I have more to offer, I have different things to offer society than in my role of just a wife and a mother. The changes in women are not going to happen in the 1950s. Those changes are going to wait until the 1960s. But the beginnings of it kind of percolate in the 1950s, that underneath this suburban ideal are percolating a lot of women who say, there's got to be a little bit more in the world than this existence. Not all of them, plenty of women loved this existence, and they found fulfillment in this existence. But lots of women didn't, and Betty Friedan played a large role in giving a voice to those women.